Welcome to the Starter Girls Podcast, the show dedicated to the Starter Girl. She's an achiever, she's a creator, she's a magic maker, she's a dreamer, and she is doing all the things. I'm your host, Jennifer Loehding, and welcome to this episode. All right, here we are. Welcome to another episode of the Starter Girls Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Loehding, and wherever you are tuning in today, we are so thrilled to have you. And I've got another fabulous guest joining me today. So excited to chat with her. And you know what I always say in Starter Girls, we're all about helping you be full, be complete, be healthy in all the areas of health, money, relationships, and vocation. And so my guest today is an amazing woman. I think you guys are going to be inspired and hopefully learn a lot of great things after listening to her today. So Debbie Weiss, after 50, woke up to the realization that life was too short to be spent prioritizing others over herself. So she ditched I can't for maybe I can, shedding her victim mentality and refusing to let struggles define her. Recently widowed, she's more determined than ever to share her message. Her debut memoir, On Second Thought, Maybe I Can, earned praise from Jack Canfield, co-author of the Chicken Soup of the Soul series. Through her memoir, podcast, and engaging talks, Debbie courageously bears her soul, reminding others they're not alone. Life is tough, but she's proof that dreams are worth pursuing. So welcome to the Starter Girls Show, Debbie. We are so thrilled to have you here today.
Oh, thank you so much, Jennifer. I'm very excited to be here.
This is going to be so much fun. And I always love, I think one of the best parts, and I know you're a podcast host yourself, and I think we talked about this before. I think one of the most rewarding parts of doing these shows is getting to meet incredible people that are doing things in the world to make a difference. I think it's just such a fun way that we get to give back, but also just learn so much about other amazing people out there.
I agree. That is the best part. I can't even believe every time that I do a podcast, whether it's my own or on somebody else's, I'm always amazed how I'm able to connect with someone in another part of the country or another part of the world and to be able to hear their inspiring stories. I couldn't agree more. That is for sure the best part. And since I'm an old lady, I think the technology thing still amazes me, right? That I could talk to someone in, a completely different place. So it's cool.
I know. You know what's so interesting about that? Yesterday, I put up a post on, I think, TikTok and YouTube, and it was a clip from another show that I did, and I was talking about how our strengths find us. And I was telling my guest that when I was a child, so I'm in my early 50s now, and when I was a child, I used to, on my boombox and my little cassette player, I would put cassette tapes in there, and I would obviously record music, because back then we didn't have, the internet like we did. We had to wait for songs to come on the radio or buy the albums, and then we'd record them. But I would also do my own presentations on my cassette player. I would record things and act like I was on the radio or do my own little things. But I mentioned to her that, never in a million years would I thought that I'd be doing a podcast, because at that time we didn't really know anything about anything really, right? With radio. I mean, we knew a little bit about that, but there was no internet back then. There wasn't all of these things that we have now. So I'm with you. I still get amazed by all the technology and the things that we have and the ability, that now we can have clients all over the world and friends all over the world. And, who would have thought we had pen pals back then?
Exactly. Oh my goodness. Remember, I used to always want a pen pal, and then I was never good at keeping up with it. Right?
So
one or two letters, and that was kind of it. But still cool to connect with somebody somewhere else.
I agree. So I want to talk about you. That's what I want to talk about. I want to learn a little bit about you. I know you and I got to talk off camera before, but my audience is going to be, who is this Debbie Weiss? So tell us a little bit, Debbie, about how you got to this place, what you're doing right now.
Well, so my life has basically been, for over 40 years, I've been a family caregiver. It started when I was 17, when my dad had a massive stroke and my parents got divorced, and he survived, luckily, but was permanently disabled. And I was his caregiver for the next 30 years. He lived for 30 years. And then I have two sons. My oldest son was diagnosed on the autistic spectrum when he was 2, and has added and changed many diagnoses since then. He's 23 now. And for anyone out there who has a child with special needs, you take being a mama bear and multiply it by a trillion. So, that is an ongoing challenge. And then my husband became permanently disabled due to both mental and physical ailments for about the last 4 years of his life or so. And then out of the blue, he was diagnosed with a terminal cancer and only survived 6 months. So, my life has been about everybody else. And not saying that I would change that, not saying not to take care of your family members, but I did that at the expense of myself. And it wasn't till around 50 when I had an aha moment, and something for me about that milestone made me think, how much longer do I have left here on this earth? And if I get to that, am I going to be one of those people who is on their deathbed thinking I shoulda, coulda, woulda, and have all these regrets? And at that moment, not that I had a specific dream, it's not like I always had a dream of being an author. I never had that dream. I didn't have anything specific that I regretted not doing. I think it was just maybe exploring who I was as a person, separate from how I can help everybody else. And I've been on that journey since then.
Wow. So I'm reading a book right now called, this is making me think of this totally different story, but I'm reading this book. When we talk about, this whole idea of finding ourselves, everybody's journey is so different. And so I'm reading this book called Worthy, and it's by Jamie Kern Lima. She's the founder. You know who she is? Founder of
I have the book right here. I
Oh,
haven't
is it
started
not a
reading it
wonderful
yet.
book?
I
Is it
didn't read
not?
it yet. I read her other book, but I
Okay.
have Worthy. That one's next
I'm
on my
lost
list.
in it right now. Just the first chapter. The first chapter, she talks about, self-confidence and worthy, how we use those interchangeably, but they're not really the same thing. And how we do a lot of things in life to build our self-confidence, but it really doesn't build our worthy. And I think when I hear stories like this, I think we all have, I guess maybe not everybody goes through this, but I think a lot of us go through those journeys in different times in our lives. And I don't know if it's an age thing, because you said here you woke up at 50, and I feel like a lot of my journey started probably a little bit before 50, but it's been in the last, maybe when I turned 47, 48. I had this major health crisis that happened, and I woke up and I realized, oh my gosh, am I going to live with this the rest of my life? And here's what I will tell you, that was 2012. We're in 2024. I still have a health condition I'm living with. And so, yes, I am. But there was this whole awakening moment where I had to realize, is this going to be my life, and what am I supposed to be doing? And so I think we all have these stories, and that book is also, her journey is this whole story for her of waking up and realizing, do I want to continue this, and how do I want my life to be? So I think we have these moments, and I think it comes back to us really finding ourselves, right? Like we lose ourselves in what we think we should be doing and what we think others want us to be doing. And then it hits us in the head one day, and we come back and say, what about me? I've gotten
Exactly.
lost in this. What about me? You know?
And it feels selfish. At least I think it felt selfish when I first said that,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so silly. Why is it selfish? You know, why can't we should make ourselves a priority when we don't? And this is what I discovered, for all those years, I don't want to say I was angry, but I was
Mm-hmm.
resentful.
Mm-hmm.
And so the stress that I was living with internally, and not that I was always screaming or anything, but it didn't take much to kind of set me off,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just living like that constantly. And when I realized this was happening because I wasn't doing anything for myself, it was an aha moment, because I found once I was able to start prioritizing my own needs, then the stress started to melt away. then I showed up better for those people.
Yeah, there's so much to that. And I think you either get that or you don't get that, Debbie. I think that is a I don't know what I want to say. Is it a wisdom thing? I don't know what it is, because I think women as a whole, and I say this because I've been an entrepreneur from the time, like my oldest is now 20, gonna be 28 this year. I started as an entrepreneur when she was like maybe 18 months old. So I was very fortunate that I've been able to be home with all three of my kids the entire time. And I've been that mom, the PTO, the field trip mom, all those things. But I think so often that as women, we have that guilt, right? And so many women I've worked with share that same thing, that whole guilt of, if I do these things for me, you know, am I being selfish? Same thing, not even the guilt. We also say we don't have time for these things. There's two parts of this. There's the guilt, and then there is this part where we say I don't have time. But I think it all comes back to this shaming thing. We feel shamed to take the time to do the things. And I think that when we recognize that our health and our mindset and it all is dependent on that, but more than that, we have a bigger role in society. And when we come to the table fully equipped with all of the capacity to give and show up fully, we can make a greater difference in those around us.
Absolutely. And I can't tell you how much I've discovered about myself over the last decade. I'm capable of so much more than I ever dreamt of. And now my life has changed because I'm excited. I'm excited about getting up today and getting to talk to you and your audience. I mean, how great is this? Right? And to share. And I think, you said wisdom. I do feel I've kind of been struggling with that because I think to myself, when I say something to my kids, and of course, then I think, and when I was in my 20s and my mother said something, it's like, yeah, 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 she doesn't know anything, right? I think so much of it does come with experience and age. And how do you teach that to someone who hasn't lived through it? Do you have to live through it yourself in order to really understand? Because otherwise, why can't we get to, those women who are in their 20s and 30s
Yeah.
and make them understand? And maybe, I don't know, maybe this generation is different, right?
Yeah. Well,
But
yeah.
I do feel like a lot of it comes with age because it's an experience thing that we have to get to that place ourselves through our own journeys.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think, I mean, I do think some people obviously grow up faster than others, but I do
Mm.
think it doesn't happen. I think you've got to be in a place where you have some kind of burning desire in there, because some people I don't think ever get with, I don't know. I mean, they might get some wisdom, but I don't know if they ever get that. You know what I mean? Because some people I feel like live their lives. I mean, one of my greatest fears, and I feel like I'm on the other side of this thing, and there's no end to this growth journey, because I think
Nope.
it's an indefinite thing till the day we die. But I do feel like there's a point where you get to some enlightenment on the other side, and I look at things and go, my greatest fear would be living my life in a life of regret, or in a life where I never experienced the these things that I've experienced. Like, because I don't even know how you explain these things to people. Again, I don't know how you teach somebody some of this stuff. I think you just have to go through it, and you have this burning desire for more in life. And when you do, I think that you start soul searching and you start digging for things. You're looking for answers. You realize there's really no answers, really. I mean, the two things that I will tell, I was on a show the other day, and you'll love this. I was on a show, and these women were amazing. Three ladies, two of them were in politics. Two of them had been cancer survivors, just incredible women. And I'm not even really telling my story, but I'm talking to them about these hypothetical, situations. And I was amazed at just being in the room with these women and the questions that they were asking and the things we were talking about. But it was funny because they were asking me all these questions about hypotheticals. And I'm like, trying to go through this, and I'm like, you can't really teach these because all these scenarios are individual. And I think we arrive when we arrive. And and it's not like you wake up one day and you're like, aha, you just go through these. And I was talking about my book, and I said, even since the time I wrote my book in 2019, a lot of those views I have, but now they're expanded. They've grown, they've gotten bigger, and my views have gotten larger, and but two of the things I will tell you I talked about in there, we were talking about, I can't remember what the specific question was, but what I said to them is like, there's this formula. If you want to talk about getting happy in life, and I don't know if it's about being happy, because I don't think every moment of life is happy, but I think overall you should be happy in life. You should be able to find happiness in life. And we were talking about this formula, and I said, really, I think it comes down to these three things: doing what's in alignment with your core values, continually growing, and serving other people. If you can pair those up, and if you're and think about this, if you're doing what's truly in alignment with your core values, you're probably doing some of these other things. Because if you're serving people, you got to grow to serve. I mean, all of this goes hand in hand. And so I really boiled it down to that. I said, when people, I think, are feeling unfulfilled, it's because there's something in that little formula that's not in there. They're either not doing something they love, they're either not, whatever, they're not finding a way to make it help other people, or they're not growing. Maybe all of them,
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I was, even though I was helping other people, I was also a volunteeraholic. So I was also, volunteering in every place
Right.
you could think of while doing it. And again, I enjoyed it. But, for me, the thing was, well, what is my passion? What is my purpose? What are my strengths?
Right.
And I really had, and still kind of have that difficulty identifying that, other than thinking, well, I'm good at math. Who cares? I was having trouble figuring it out. And the funny thing is, when I think back, I was always good at talking. And my mother would always say, everywhere you go, you wind up in a conversation with somebody and you find out so much about them and they're telling you everything. And I'm like, yeah, it does, that's a skill. I don't see that as a skill or a gift.
Right.
And the only thing I wanted to be when I was a little girl was a teacher. And when it was getting time for, going to college, my mother said to me, you're not going to be a teacher because you are the first generation that has all this opportunity in front of them. When she went to school, you had to, as a woman, you had to be a teacher or a nurse. There was basically, those were the acceptable things. And so she said, you've got this chance. You're the first. And so I wound up majoring in accounting and I became an accountant and it was fine. But I still always seem to, now looking back in everything that I was doing along the way, it always came down to teaching somebody something. When I was doing the accounting, the computers were first starting near the end of my career with accounting. And I was proposing a business to the partners in my firm to go and teach my clients how to use the accounting software. And then I switched careers and became an insurance agent. And I don't sell people stuff. My favorite part is teaching them and explaining to them in layman's terms that you can understand what this means. And now, as an author and a speaker and a coach, right? What is it? It's teaching.
Right. Isn't that funny?
Entrepreneurs, are you ready to level up your leadership skills? Tune in now for an exclusive offer designed just for you.
This is my time.
Did you know 63% of consumers prefer businesses aligned with their values? Recognizing your core values isn't just vital for business growth, it's the bedrock of effective leadership. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or an aspiring creator, identifying your core values is a key step in constructing the framework of a successful leader, enabling you to lead authentically, expand your business, and live life on your terms.
I never settled on play, putting the kettle to flame. I go 100 all day, foot on the pedal, no brakes. 10, 9, paid on my dues, waited in line, 8, 7.
Are you ready to access tools to kickstart your leadership journey? Unlock a treasure trove of insights and get your free resources at www.linktree/Jennifer Loehding. Take that crucial first step toward realizing your leadership aspirations and elevate your leadership game today.
Ready to shine.
It's just in a different, there was no other kind of teacher but a classroom teacher.
Yeah.
When I was a kid.
Right.
And now look at all the opportunity out there.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. There's so many takeaways in that, just that little that story you just told right there, the whole idea of, us squashing our, our dreams being squashed when we're young. And, I've talked about that so many times with people. Just, we have kind of a vision of what we want to do, but we're sort of kind of, kind of shied away from that because we think we need to be doing something else. And then we come to find out that, yeah, we're doing that and it's okay, but it's not really our passion or our life calling, But then there's also the conversation of how your strengths tend to lean into you. They find you in a way, and here you are. Obviously communication is important. I'm a communicator too, so I can certainly resonate with you on that, because I used to get in trouble for talking a lot. And who would have known it would have become a skill for me later on, because I was shamed for it for many years,
Exactly.
So nobody means ill. I don't mean that in a bad way. I think it's just is what it is. But sometimes those things that, we think are kind of our worst qualities end up becoming some of the things that really are our gifts and bring us joy, So good for you for being able to hone in on that and figure that out. Were there any, I guess maybe a question I would ask you, you mentioned earlier about, struggling to find your strengths. Have there been any, tools that have really helped you kind of navigate that, or any pivotal moments, I guess, that, you kind of talked, obviously your mom mentioning, that you make friends, you realize you picked up on that, but were there anything else you can recall that sort of kind of has helped you guide you in that direction?
When I was petrified of public speaking. Anything to do with public speaking, I would steer clear of to make sure that I was not put in that position. So whenever I volunteered, I was always the treasurer, because the treasurer never talks. I can do the money thing, and that's that. When so I have an insurance agency, and years ago I hired a kid who was in his early 20s. He was the youngest mayor in the state of New Jersey at the time that, I don't remember if he was 23 or 25. And I got an opportunity to go into the high school and give a presentation about auto insurance. No way. I'm not doing that. But he kind of pushed me. And I just thought to myself, gosh, he's 25 years old and look at what he's doing. And you've got to get over this. I said yes. And I was mortified. I was so nervous about this whole thing. Anyway, start teaching. And, sometimes, look, auto insurance isn't that exciting a topic. I get that. Sometimes kids had their head down. Sometimes they were, I knew they weren't paying attention. But there was one part of the presentation that, however I started describing it, I was giving an example. This was all new to me, so I never did this before. And all of a sudden, they all looked up at me because I had gotten their attention. And all eyes were on me. They were with me as I was telling this story. And afterwards, they asked questions. And I thought to myself, this is what I want. This is an incredible high. I don't know how else to explain it, because I was impacting them.
Right.
Right? I mean, hopefully that's a story that they will then remember and take with them. In this case, when they're ready to buy their own insurance, but at least they understand. And that connection, the fact that I was able to somehow make a difference in their lives, that was it. It was like, when do I get to come again?
Yeah. I feel like you were in your zone at that moment. You tapped into your strengths right there. I feel like we have those moments, right? And that's when you're like, oh, I'm good at this part. I found the thing that I'm good at doing, and it's just something in there in that storytelling, and you got their attention. So, and wow.
But the thing is, think about it. This was something I was terrified of.
Right.
If I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be doing this.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, I had to walk through that fear and then discover, oh my goodness, how did I ever live without this? This is something I love. This is that feeling I want more of. How do I get that?
Right.
And I never would have experienced it if I continued to give into the fear.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. It's a good story. And it's good for anybody listening, that because public speaking is like the number one thing people fear, right? And I've had
Yep.
a speaker, I've had a actual speaking coach on my other show actually talk about that, come in and, with speaking. And it's funny, yeah, because I have so many stories, not like that, obviously, but I have stories too where, I always tell the story about being and taking public speaking in college and having to do an impromptu speech and getting up there and I thinking, you know what, like I will never do this again. Like I didn't get that feeling you had. I did it, sat down, and I was like, I will never do this again. And then it wasn't until I think, God has funny ways of teaching us lessons, And years later, I jumped into Mary Kay, not really knowing that I was going to have to do presentations and then later train and then train in front of people on stages and all of that. So he was prepping me for all of this stuff. And eventually I moved into a company where I had to train in front of like 500 people at a time. And, and one thing led to another. And then now I'm doing a podcast. And it's so funny because I look at all this now and I think, I don't know about you because you're doing the show, but I just remember being even in the beginning stages of my podcast and being so heavily critical of myself, everything I would say, I would do, how I look, my facial expression. And now I do the podcast. When I tell people I do edits, I don't do edits. So this is true story. Like for anybody listening, the only edits that I do is if there is an internet glitch, if I got somebody on and we just went too long on something that was probably just irrelevant, like a political rant or something, or I need to clip an or an ah out every once in a blue moon, but there are no edits. What you see on these videos is what we do, and I put it out there. It is what it is. My theory is lit. You know what? You don't like, don't look. But that's where I'm at. And I think we get more comfortable in our skin because we've done it so much that eventually you just get to the place you're like, yeah, it's kind of no big deal. But with that same point, the other day when I went on that video, they were doing it live on Facebook. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, we're doing this live now. Like there's no edits, right? But I'm not doing edits anyways. But it was just the whole mental thought that, oh my gosh, we're doing this with no edits now, And so that's not to say that every time we try something new or have to get on a new stage or maybe talk to that person that intimidates, we might not get the butterflies in our stomach and feel a little bit of nervousness, But it's what you said. It's taking that step to move forward and do the fearful thing that allows the doors to open up and give you these big opportunities.
And something inside of me, every time it came up, I knew it was something that I really wanted to do, but almost wouldn't admit to myself because then I would have had to face my fear.
Yeah.
And, I've always been a scaredy cat from the time I was a little kid. And like you said, it's not like the fear has gone away.
Right.
It's just learning to, live with it, put it in its place and walk through it. And it's hard. Each time it's still hard.
You're amazing. So speaking of doing big things, I know you had something big that you got to do. You got to be on a TV show or something. You had a neat little thing. I got to watch it. Tell us about that because my people are going to be, what is this she's talking about?
Well, thank you. Yes, I was fortunate enough to be on the Kelly Clarkson show back in the end of November. I had a little segment at the end of every show. She does and I can't think of the name of the segment, but she does the same segment and has a name, and it's What I'm Liking Now or something like that, because at the end she shows your Instagram page and she hearts it. So it was like a Zoom. I wasn't there in person, but it was in honor of the fact that November is National Family Caregiver Month. And it was a crazy, incredible experience because I only had 48 hours notice that I actually was selected and that it was going to be recorded. So very exciting.
Yeah, I'm sure you were just like, and you tell us, you were probably nervous and excited and just like, what am I going to say? And am I going to, and all the things.
All the things you have, you don't meet her ahead of time, but you talk to the producer and, they give you your segment. They said to me, basically, she's going to ask you 2 questions. This is a 2-minute segment. The first question is going to be, tell me about your life, basically.
Right.
I have 1 minute to answer. 1 minute. And that is an issue for me because I go on a little bit too much. So it's not like I don't know the answer to who am I, but now I've got to fit it succinctly into a minute.
Yeah.
So that was kind of difficult. And then he also gave me an idea of what the second question was going to be. And then we went on, just the producer came on Zoom with me about, I don't know, 45 minutes before I was going to tape my segment. And he, practiced, and I gave him my answer, and he's like, that's a little depressing. I said, well, what do you want me to say? Like, this is what it is. You asked what my life is. It's about being a caregiver. And he said, yeah, but if it were a 6 or 7 minute segment, that would be fine, because then you have time to bring the audience, back up feeling good. And I said, well, the second question will do that. So, and at the last minute, I thought I had my answer. So I really started to panic, because now, everything I thought I was going to say, I had to revamp a little bit. So it was very stressful, very stressful.
Wow. Well, what an opportunity. I mean, and again, it just goes to show, when you're doing the things that you love doing, the opportunities, present themselves. Had you never stepped on that stage, that opportunity may not have presented itself.
So can I share one other crazy thing that happened to me?
Yeah.
So my book was published August of 2023. At the end of July, before the end of July, I get this email saying, as an Oprah insider, which I didn't even know I was an Oprah insider, Oprah is coming to tape a show in New York, and there's 100 tickets, and we're asking people first, blah, 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 blah. So I respond, yes, I want to come. I don't hear back. I'm allowed to bring someone. So I was going to bring my cousin. And it's a whole long story, which I'm not going to go into, but I didn't hear, and it sounded like I wasn't going to get it. And the week before, I was on vacation, and I was sitting on the beach, and I started, for whatever reason, it popped into my head, they're not going to email me. Somebody's going to call me from Oprah's show. The show was taping on a Monday. This is Friday. I'm driving home from my vacation, and the phone rings, and sure enough, it's a producer from the show. And he starts asking me questions, and he said, we really don't have enough tickets, and blah, blah, blah. I find out Friday night we're going to the show. Now, I have my book. There is a chapter in my book that talks about an event, an Oprah event, actually, that my cousin and I went to right before COVID, that kind of, changed me. And so I sign a book to Oprah, thinking, okay, I'm going to go to this event, and at least, better than mailing her something that I know is going to wind up in a pile or a giveaway, whatever she does with it, I'm going to be able to give it to her staff person. P.S. At the end of the show, that was very intimate. If you are an Oprah insider, you've seen the tapes, the videos and stuff. And at the end, she was just so generous with her time. And she was taking selfies with people. And I got to have a one-on-one conversation with Oprah and gave her my book.
Gave me chills
myself.
when you were telling this story. It's so awesome.
It was crazy. And let me tell you, everyone was kind of laughing at me. I really visualized it. I'm not good with, I know you could go online and do this, but I couldn't figure it out. So I had printed out this big picture of Oprah interviewing somebody else, and I cut my head off, and I put my head over the person's head, and I had it on my desk, the whole thing. And it was an amazing experience. And I can't believe in 1 year I met Oprah and was on the Kelly Clarkson show. How does this happen? It was amazing.
Because you got up on that stage.
Yeah, exactly. It's got to start somewhere.
It starts earlier than that, but that was a big pivotal moment. We all have these, I feel like, series of events, but golly, that's what I think is so neat about this, is if you go back and look at all the little things, you'll find those moments where you go, had I not done that, this wouldn't have happened. Or had I not had this major, upheaval in my life, this wouldn't have taken place. So I think, incredible story. And thank you for sharing all of those with our audience. I think if anything, coming out of this, this is a powerful reminder of just taking that courageous step, doing, finding the fear and then going through it anyways to do what you want to do.
Especially because, it's not like I'm someone with connections or, you know
Right.
what I'm saying? It has nothing to do with that. Just everything happened the way
Yeah.
it needed to happen. And I could have never predicted it,
Yeah.
ever.
And had you not decided to find you, to take that time to start looking into your strengths and the things that you can do, none of this would have happened. So such a great story. Great
Thank
story,
you.
Debbie. So real quick, tell us a little bit about your podcast. And then we want to know, the audience needs to know, where do we find that, the books, all of that thing.
Funny you should say that. So my podcast just last week, I am now on Transformation Talk Radio, and it is live. So
Awesome.
as you were describing how scary it was, this today is actually going to be my second episode, but last week was my first, and I thought the same thing. What about, what for me, I mean, I do and all of that, but sometimes I take long pauses as I'm like catching, trying to figure out what to say next. And yeah, it's nerve-wracking. But anyway, so it's the Maybe I Can podcast. And even though it is on transformationtalkradio.com, you can find it wherever, you listen to your podcast. It's there as well.
Awesome. Congratulations. That's so awesome. Yes. And I'm
Thank you.
with you. Sometimes I have to do those pauses too, or sometimes, like I even did it a few minutes ago, I go to tell something, I kind of lose my direction. And I
Oh,
have
yeah.
oh, there it is. And I got to kind of keep going until I find it. It's one of the joys that we get when we're on the other end, that we have to listen and think at the same time. Sometimes you're probably a little more relaxed on the other side because you don't have to think it,
Exactly.
I feel like, maybe not, but I feel like when I go on people's show, I get to sort of just relax a little bit because I just answer what they're asking or dialogue with them, but I don't have to be like listening and thinking at the same time,
Agreed. That's the one thing, like you said, going back to the beginning, it's only a year. May 1st will be a year since I launched the podcast. And the interviewing part is much more difficult for me. And I'm very critical of myself when it comes to that. And I find it hard. I do find it challenging. It's just kind of easier for me to do solos and just, go.
Yeah. Well, you have a great voice, and I haven't listened to your show yet, but I'm sure it sounds amazing because I'm listening to you, talk now, and I think you sound great. So I'm sure
Thank
it's
you.
great. And you sound like an amazing storyteller. So I'm sure there's a lot of good imparting knowledge that you're doing there, and your fans are enjoying it. So thank you for being you and sharing all this stuff. So where we talked about the podcast, where do we find the book? If they want to get in touch with you, where do they find you?
So the best place for everything is my website. It's DebbieRWeiss.com. You got to do the R, otherwise you wind up on a realtor in California. And so all the information, the contact information, the book, Amazon and barnesandnoble.com and all those places too. But it's easier just to go to the website and click the button.
Gotcha. Okay. And we'll make sure too, Debbie, when this goes out, I'll make sure that we get it in there so they know how to find it. We'll get you tagged and get that way.
Thank you.
The circles can connect with you. So this has been awesome. I'm so appreciative of your time and grateful that we had an opportunity. I know the first time you and I chatted, we got to talk, and I love your energy, your infectious energy, and your warm fuzzy. I always say the warm fuzzy feel, because I know sometimes when you meet people, you kind of can just tell, hey, I really like this person. They emit a great vibe. And for those of you not watching the actual video, she has some really cute, super cool glasses on, which I think are so important because
did I show you this?
That approachable. Yeah. And you got the cool ones. It got the little frames that pop off, but I love it.
Thank you. Yep.
Cool.
They make me happy.
Absolutely. Well, and accessories do that. So,
yep.
Well, thank you again for being on the show. We appreciate you, Debbie. Keep doing your thing. Keep inspiring. Keep taking care of you and letting those opportunities show up where they need to show up.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Jennifer. It was great.
Absolutely. And our fans and audience, we love you. Thank you for tuning in. And, if you enjoy the show, I would say head on over to Apple, give us a review there. You can hit the subscribe button on YouTube so we can keep sharing all this fabulous content with you. And as I always say, you guys be kind to yourself and be kind to one another. We will see you next time.